I have a lot of thoughts right now. I'm thinking about the state of the world, how the world has always been this way, how it's always been forms and methods of control, and understanding the information I know about that has shown that to me throughout my life, and how it's constantly reconfirmed through everything I do. Which, like, I question everything and the validity, and I've been thinking a lot about universal law, which I will talk about, but it's only ever just my experience with living and doing what I do, and I can't use that to discredit your experience and your beliefs, because I do believe that whatever an individual believes will lead them to what they do seek. Like, if you believe you're going to go to heaven, you're going to go to heaven. If you believe you're going to go to hell, you'll go to hell. If you believe the world is shit, the world is shit. But that's not to negate the inherent interconnectedness and just, like, base thoughts that we hold around the world, because we all influence each other, and we all, as Ram Dass says, walk each other home. And that's the point to, like, the more universal law aspect of it, because I do think that it is one of harmonious peace and having pain, but both of them coexisting within the space of gratitude. I think humans and the world have free will in how that happens and how it goes about. But it's so interesting to think about, because we have had our magic stolen and actively used against us to perpetuate something. I think at some point people get so lost in their own delusions that they start chasing their own fucking tail. It is the Ouroboros that we are facing right now. And I think that's so easily changeable at, like, any given moment, because it has to just be a recognition of your own ignorance and an active journey in lessening that ignorance. Because we exist within dogma. Dogma is how we cope with being alive. One thing of Krishnamurti I think about is talks of culture and politics, and how I hold this identity and I'll kill you to uphold my identity, which is just choice. Choice based on your environment, but the environment you created is one that's just killing you too. And I think that points to some level of self-hatred that seems to just be growing, and honestly probably being used to actively contort us. Because when you exist in this place of hate, you normalize malice and whatever it is that you desire. And I speak in such, like, universal terms because it's easier that way. I don't know who I'm talking to, but there are very pointed examples, such as, like, epigenetics and how people talk about the houseless community and just the multifaceted intersectionality of colonization, because that is everything. That is not just a term to be used for the literal process that brought us here, but the spiritual aspect of controlling how we view ourselves to fit this narrative. And we are designed to play our part. Like, the world is extremely superficial, literally plastic. And there is a level of superficiality that is comforting, because all of this is illusionary. I'm ultimately nothing. I don't know if there is an afterlife. I don't know what happens when I do die. I could be in the afterlife right now based off of beliefs, but I'm thinking of reincarnation, because whatever I did in my past life caused me to be here in the state that I'm in. But it also could be a form of heaven and hell, depending on how I choose to view those concepts and act within them. And for the comment on the houseless population, that is direct control over how we live, which then makes us cattle and easy to manipulate. But we already are cattle. Like, every single thing on this planet has the same level of emotional intelligence and acts about it in their own unique ways. Like, cows have best friends. We don't need science to prove that animals fucking love each other or that nature loves itself. It's just so fucking evident. But for the baseline for a lot of people, you have had your ability to be self-sufficient and sufficient within community in lieu of some toxic middleman selling you poison. And if you try to go about it in the right ways, it leads back to corporations. So I'm not saying don't try, I'm just saying we gotta recognize how deep it goes, and even if you think you're skirting by it, you're not. And that's moral licensing, and that's a whole other fucking tangent. And that's what I'm talking about, like operating from my emotions more. I'm feeling a lot of rage, and I'm doing it for myself and for the collective. But I think I'm pointing in a direction that ultimately heals us. I was talking to my friend about like with the thought of being self-sufficient, you should go take a herbalist class. That's basically all I'm trying to say. Me and my friend were talking about how we should do herbalist classes because that's the most practical thing that we can do against the system we're in. And that's difficult because not everyone will be able to see the revolution to fruition. But right now, with what you do, you have direct control over what comes. I think at least having a understanding of how you are impacted can lead you to better ways of being. And there's this whole notion I have around how we are the cells of the planet, and like right now the world naturally purges itself. It gets rid of what it needs to get rid of in order to have more of what it needs. And like to how we act directly, we really fuck up that equilibrium. And recently my friend was talking about how difficult it is to have shared space and shared equipment because ultimately there's going to be damage that impacts everybody else. But he said that's going to be hard to do because look at how we treat the planet. I don't know. The words that come to my mind are hopeful and vapid because it is ultimately impermanent. I really don't know. I just don't know. But I trust that what I experience right now is real and I can feel what I can feel and try to just learn more about it. Try to help people along the way. I think if more of us just try to have an active practice in that, we'd really change our ways. Because it is this operation off of base ignorance that is born into us. That's the epigenetic parts. Like, and it's a tricky, nuanced topic. I'm not an expert in nothing. I just know how I feel. And that's how it all ties into epigenetics. I remember reading a study about how rats were electrocuted when they touched a button, and the grandchildren of the first rats were just naturally afraid of that button. I think we ultimately have free will in how we go about reacting to our environments and how our ancestors acted within these environments too. But we can be predisposed to ways of thought just through our genetics because our experiences and our emotions literally rewrite our bodies. And I remember reading in a anthropology textbook that my professor gave me. I think it was for a gender and women's studies class. It was for like intro to anthro. But in the little section of the book that we read, it was talking about how women have this image that they are only here to reproduce and create children because that's a narrative that has been fed. Like, and I was thinking about how could me and my family get through having such a tyrannical father. Maybe tyrannical is harsh, but I don't think it is. Based off of like, that's a fucking whole other topic too. Dads. Because I can see him for who he is now, and he's done like a big 180. But as a child, I don't understand how any of us were okay with that behavior. But I can see how we're okay with that behavior because that's the forces of patriarchy. Like for context, I grew up around women, and we all suffered from this turmoil of a man. And that impacts everybody too. Like, there's just so much dogma, so much binary. It's a lot to hold and a lot to think about. Hopefully I was able to talk about the more universal concepts and provide thought for the interpersonal aspects of it all, because they're ultimately all connected. I remember one time I said that I don't know if what I'm saying is intellectual or intelligible, but I know that I feel it deeply and believe in it truly.